today we are going to talk about various types of abuse and how you can recognize it. What is abuse is the different types of abuse, how you can stop abuse if you recognize that how you can stop it if you don't recognize that it's going on, and how you might actually be emotionally abusing someone without realizing it. So those are all topics we're going to discuss today. So abuse is physical or emotional harm to someone. And it can take place anywhere, at home, at school, in public, or in private. It's frequently done by a person that we know and love, and someone that we should be able to trust. So family members, friends, boyfriends, or girlfriends. And these relationships frequently make it very difficult for the person to leave the abuser and or demand that the abuse stop and that they be treated with respect. So it's a very complex relationship. Frequently abusers were abused themselves as children or in other relationships, and or they saw this modeled maybe by parents, and so that they learn this is a normal way of life, a normal response to conflict. So the different types of abuse include child abuse. Children are frequent targets because they're young, they're small, and they can't or don't know how to respond appropriately when they're abused. There are 4 types of child abuse: physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect. Neglect is failing to provide the basic needs, such as food, clothing, or love. And neglect is sometimes a very complex thing within a family. Sometimes only 1 or 2 children will be singled out to be neglected, and other children will be treated appropriately. So it's a very complex, again, situation. Then there's domestic abuse, and this would be abuse between spouses or between boyfriends and girlfriends, and it also can involve a former spouse. So sometimes even when a relationship is ended, the abuse and the threats don't end. So this is the use of force to control and maintain power over a spouse, or, like I said, a boyfriend or girlfriend. Women are twice as likely to be abused as they are to be the abuser, but they are the abuser in some relationships. There is a 3-stage cycle to domestic abuse. The first one is the tension building stage. So in this, emotional abuse goes on: insults, threats, arguments, accusations. So this is where the abuser, is not happy with anything that the abusee does. And maybe accuses them of flirting with someone or having a relationship with someone else or things like that. The second stage then is the violent stage. So this is where the physical abuse actually occurs. This can involve hitting, choking, and the use of weapons. After that phase is over, then there is the honeymoon phase. And the couple makes up. The abuser is very contrite, says they will never, do this again. They're going to change. So it's a lot of apologies and promises. And so, the person that's being abused then decides to stay again. Well, once that ends, then it starts up again with the tension building stage. So it's very difficult to break the cycle, very difficult for the abused person to get out of this relationship. Another type of abuse is elder abuse. And the elderly are often frail physically. They may have multiple physical problems and lots of needs. In addition, they may have memory issues. And so it can be difficult for them to understand this situation, difficult for them to know where to obtain help. They're easily taken advantage of because of their physical situation. Also, they often are the target for scams. People steal from them. They don't frequently understand some of the technology today, and so, like I said, they can be easily taken advantage of. They're also can be the target for physical abuse. This can occur in the home, or it can occur in a nursing home situation. So that can happen. And then also emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is usually from family members, and so the elderly are unfortunately frequently at risk. The other type of abuse is hazing. And this is when newcomers to an organization or a group are harassed in an abusive and humiliating way. So this may be when someone joins a sports team, a gang, a fraternity or a sorority, any type of organization. Marching bands have hazing. So different organizations can have them. And so it's a way to kind of, for the newcomer to prove that they really want to be a member. And also it's ultimately a way for the older people within the group to show their power over the new people by forcing them to commit these acts. So what effects does being abused have on someone? They may suffer physical injuries, and these can be very severe. Humiliation and isolation. Isolation is a very key component for a lot of these types of abuse, particularly domestic abuse. The abuser will try to isolate the person they're abusing from friends and family members so that, they don't try to take the person away from them. Depression, low self-esteem, poor appetite, or overeating. So some people react on one extreme and other people will react at the other extreme. Poor energy or fatigue, poor concentration and difficulty making decisions, difficulty sleeping, feelings of worthlessness, guilt, shame, and anxiety. They will most likely lose the ability to trust in future relationships and have relationship difficulties because of this experience. They may get involved in alcohol or drug abuse and also possibly have eating disorders, consider or commit suicide. Post-traumatic stress syndrome can occur in these people. They can develop anxiety disorders and panic attacks. So you can see that, being abused can have lifelong effects on people, and so it is very serious. Now, you may not recognize that abuse is going on in friends or family members, and so obviously you can't really stop it if you don't recognize it. So it's kind of a difficult thing, and particularly if the person won't recognize or admit that they're being abused. Denial is very strong in these people because usually the person that's abusing them is someone they do love, and so they don't want to admit that there's a problem. So the best thing to do in that situation is to support these people as best you can, show that you care for them, that you're there for them, give them emotional support to help counteract the negative emotional effects of being abused. The other thing is to encourage them to obtain help from any source that they will go to. There are multiple organizations, the police, there are shelters, if they're an elderly person, if there's nursing home administration, parents, if it's a friend and you think they're being abused by a boyfriend or girlfriend, talking to that friend's parents, they may not recognize what's going on. So, looking for if all of a sudden you have a friend and they seem to be changing and developing some of these behaviors, then it might be a sign that there's a relationship, that there's some problem going on. So, trying to identify it and help these people as much as possible. The other thing is you want to make sure that you don't participate in any behavior that can be abusive. And generally, if you're hitting someone, that's pretty obvious. But sometimes emotional abuse can be done and we don't really recognize because we've grown up, hearing these things, and so they're just natural that we say these things and we're not really cognizant of, what effect they may have on others. So emotional abuse can include things like being controlling of someone else, obsessive about them, very manipulative, selfish, and requiring their behavior and their to be towards you, aggressive or needy behavior towards someone else, being easily jealous and having difficult time controlling your anger, trying to control someone, who they're friends with, who they hang out with, trying to control their behavior in that way, what they wear or do. Any of these kinds of behaviors can be emotional abuse and, lead to a relationship that's not really a healthy relationship. So, you don't want to have that behavior towards someone else, and you also want to be able to recognize that if someone's behavior is like that towards you. Other things you don't want to insult, humiliate it, or put down other people. Use coercion, using force or threats to make someone do what you want. So, these are all obviously not good things to do to someone else, and they might be something that you might not even consider doing as an individual in your individual relationships. But then you might find yourself as part of a group that, does act in this way, maybe a group of friends, and, you find that, they're acting towards somebody else in an abusive manner. Or you might want to be part of a more formal organization, and you find that some of their traditions are abusive. You may be, the person being abused or not, and so recognizing that these situations are not healthy and trying to do what you can to change those situations, or sometimes you just have to say, I'm not going to be a part of this, and make other choices. So, it's recognizing this and, being able to recognize that you're doing something that's abusive to someone else is the first thing in being able to change your behavior. So hopefully that's given you some insight into various types of abuse. Thank you.